right, hello everybody, and welcome to Intro to Physical Security. My name is Karen.
And I'm Matt.
And today, in the next 45-ish minutes to 50 minutes, we're going to be going kind of through a flurry of different physical security bypasses and then the remediations for each. So before we get started, you guys might be wondering, what is bypass? A lot of the times when people are thinking about physical hacking, they're thinking about like the cool, showy stuff they see in the movies, right? So lockpicking especially is something that like looks very visually interesting. They use in a lot of those movies, but it takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of other methods that allow people access into physical locked out locations that are usually faster, more consistent, and usually lockpicking is like a later resort if those methods don't work. So here is a really good example of some lock bypass. And the reason that we have, issues with physical security is because people don't think about security when they're designing spaces. So we have this door that's locked. It's an S abloy. That's a pretty hard lock to pick. But it doesn't matter how hard it is to pick that lock if someone can stick their hand through the mail slot and let themselves in, right? And so the idea of this presentation is to kind of get you guys to start thinking about physical security and how that can affect your spaces. So again, why do we care about bypass? Well, a lot of the times we're ignoring the lock completely and figuring out a different way to exploit the mechanisms that keep the space secure to get into those places. Again, they're faster and more reliable than lockpicking. Often some of these methods can take anywhere from 2 minutes to like 3 seconds to do. And so we try to leave lockpicking for later because it takes a little bit more time. It's a very important part of a red teamer's toolkit. And again, it doesn't matter how secure your servers are. If you have the most secure encrypted servers in the entire world, if someone can take it home and spend as much time as they need getting into it, then it doesn't matter. So here's one more fun little video about not thinking about security. Someone installed a new lock on their door recently, and they're very excited about it. It is one of these lovely little things. It's helpful, but then they remembered after installation, it's a sliding door. So we're trying to get you guys to think more about security. Similar to cybersecurity, physical security is also that constant back and forth of cat and mouse between the red team and the blue team. As the red team finds vulnerabilities, the blue team is figuring out remediations and patches, and then the red team is finding a new exploit to that patch, pretty much over and over and over again, forever. So let's jump into it. I'm going to pass it off to Matt, who's going to start telling you guys about door latches.
Yes, so again, the same preamble that Karen gave. This is the last day of the con. My voice is also shot. So if I trail off at all, I do apologize for that. But we're going to begin with some of the most basic forms of door locks that you see, which is going to be the common door latches, as well as their various remediations to prevent further bypassing. So we see this all, wrong side. We see this all the time in various forms of movies, TV shows. This is the very stereotypical carding, which is where someone would take any piece of flat material, often in TV and movies. It's just a credit card, go up to a lock and swipe it down, and in 1.5 seconds, they're into the building. It's almost as easy as they make it look. However, there are some still further steps that you can take to make sure that this process is not only the most effective, but the quickest and easiest to do. One of the things that best combats this is the notion of dead latches. Dead latches typically don't exist in movies and TV, otherwise that would make things way too difficult for them. So walking you through a little bit what the structures of stereotypical dead latches look like are going to be this little semicircle here that's attached to the latch itself, or if you can see it, if it's not cut off by the podium, this isolated triangle down here. So these latches, when they are actuated, dead latches, when they are actuated, prevent the actual latch from being able to be pushed in further. And on a properly installed door, these latches should be able to be, should be actuated when the door is shut properly. Here's a little video. Oh, went right by it. Video example there of the function of it. I'm sure most of us are familiar with it, but might as well provide you with a visual aid. These locks are very common in most residential and retail or office environments. So deactivating the dead latch. Sometimes the door is installed in such a way that the dead latch is already inactivated. This is going to be a very common theme that you see throughout the direction of this presentation about various remediation practices and just how important it is to make sure that when you are installing everything, the strike plate, the door frame, everything is flush with one another, and it prevents different vulnerabilities from happening. Other times the dead latch and the strike plates are almost installed properly, which is, again, you're going to see a whole heavy focus on proper installation today. But if it is installed improperly, or even properly installed strike plates still lead to possibilities for tools to be inserted and allowed for various carding methods. There is pushing and shoving. Pushing is when you push the latch away from you. Pulling is when you bring it towards you. And there are various tools here that you can use to help gain entry to these various different locks and deactivate the dead latches. These are your standard latch slips right up here. Various carding tools, as well as just bent pieces of wire that you can use to deactivate these locks. It's a lot easier than what you would think. So this is an instruction for pulling. Pulling is where you are, again, bringing that latch towards you. And once the dead latch is not actuated, you can place a tool right here. They're using this as a traveler's hook. It's a very common bypassing tool for carding, where you take the latch itself and you're pulling it towards you. And as you are pulling the lock towards you, you are also moving the door so that the door opens and you're able to go right in the same motion with the latch without removing the tool. Here's another video example for you.
Oh, it's me.
Yes, that's Karen again.
Hello.
So yes, that's just a standard example of pulling, where you are just, again, pulling the latch mechanisms and the dead latch out in the same motion, as well as opening the door. Get out of that there. There we go. So the other side of this, instead of pulling, is shoving. After ensuring that the dead latch is not actuated again, shove the tool between the door and the strike plate, as you see here. And then without removing the tool, in the same motion, move the tool towards you. Again, this is going to depend on what direction the latch is facing, and you can figure that out through this method. So long as you are deactivating the latch, when you're inserting the tool here, it'll be an easy fix for you. And again, here's a close-up visual example. When you see that you have when you can feel that the latch itself is towards you, you're just pushing that material in, and then you're also getting that dead latch deactivated there, and then opening the door towards you. Again, the best remediation for this is proper installation, making sure that your door frames are properly flush when you are making them, and making sure that the dead latch is actually actuated when you close the door, and not just assuming that it is as soon as you install the door. Doing proper testing yourself is very important. Again, that strike plates are installed properly, that they're not loose and providing a greater gap between the door and the latch itself, and the door fits the frame properly, providing less space for tools to be inserted. Yes, that's, again, pretty much the same thing. It's installed strike plate properly. Dead latch is actuated when the door is closed. And again, some nice retrofits that you can have for a door that's already installed is these things called latch plates. I'll move out of the way so you can see them a little bit better here. These are very common, again, to see in a lot of retail and residential areas, where a piece of metal is placed in front of the door latch itself so that tools cannot access this very important area here where the latch is, and it prevents tools from being used to directly attack the latch itself. However, they can still be bypassed using other methods, which Karen will get into now.
Yeah, so speaking of other methods, we can also use a handle-targeted bypass. So sometimes the dead latch is installed properly, it's actuated, and you can't card the door open. Oh no, what do we do? Well, there are other bypass methods that instead of targeting that latch, we target the handle. This mimics a person exiting through the door from the secure side. For the sake of convenience, it is way easier if someone inside of a building can just get out without needing to find their keys, their credentials, etc. And so that convenience is actually, can be used as a security vulnerability to bypass a door. So this is the tool that we use. It is called an under the door bypass tool. You can buy them online, you can make them out of wire. This is kind of like the general shape, but it's kind of to your own preference. And here's the basic instructions. I'm gonna show you guys a video which will explain it a lot better, but basically this tool is inserted under the door and then pushes down on the handle from the secure side, allowing you access. So here is a wonderful video that we have from both sides of the door. So on the left here, we have the secure side, and then on the right, we have the unsecure side, you can see the tool being inserted. The table's a little in the way, I apologize for that. But there goes the tool, and it stood up and swung around until it's maneuvered onto that door handle. There we go. And then once it's on that door handle, there's a string attached to the end of the wire that can be pulled. It pulls down that lever handle and allows you access into the space. Amazing. The other kind of handle-based bypass that you might encounter is doorknobs. So you don't see these as often as you used to, and that's because of fire code. Doorknobs can be very hard to open if you have weak grip strength or, disabilities that prevent you from being able to use them as easily. And so because of fire code, they're being slowly phased out, but you might still encounter some of these in the wild. So this is the tool that we use for that. It's kind of similar to that under the door bypass tool. It's made out of string and a little bit of wire. You can see over here, I've also added some tape just to help improve the grip of the tool on that doorknob. So it's kind of shaped a little funny because it's designed to go around the side of the door and fit in between the frame and the door. And so it's a little funky of a shape, but this is basically how it's used. It's a tool that you use to put the string onto the doorknob, and then you tension it back and forth, slowly turning that knob until it's open. I have another demo video here. It's a little bit harder to see because my phone camera was not very good that day. So you can see down there this tool, and you can see where I've attached the tape to the string for better adhesion. And I'm wiggling the wire onto the door to help get that tape on there. And then once I can kind of tell that it is in the right place, I can drop the metal tool and then pull both sides of the string tight. There we go. And then I am pulling on that. Let's see. Yeah. I try to do a zoom in here, and it's not very good. But basically, it rotates that doorknob using the string and then the tape for extra friction. This is still me. Okay, cool. Oh, is this you? Oh, this is you. Okay, sorry. There you go. So next, I'll pass it on to Matt, who will be talking about Crashbars, which is another wire-based bypass method.
Thank you. So Crashbars are something that you see very commonly, again, in more so retail and office spaces. They are going to be these doors that you see right here. It is important to note that the Crashbar is going to be the one that you see there on the left, not this one right here. The Crashbar itself is the one that has that long bar under the middle right there, versus this is called a Pushbar. We will talk about it in greater detail later on, but the distinction in terms of bypassing is important. So diving right into Crashbars right here, they're common pieces of hardware that you see in almost every space. The tools that you use, very similar in form to the under the door tools that we just showed you, where they are just wire-based and string-based. You can make it yourself out of like a coat hanger and a shoelace if needed. It is a very simplified tool with a very simple design as opposed to the doorknob tool that we just showed you. To use, first what you're going to do is insert the tool at the side of the door if possible. If it is not possible to do so, you can start at the bottom and then work your way up. And then you're going to position the tool in such a way that you can get that hook end that we just showed you to latch onto the bar itself. As opposed to your, as opposed to your push bars, you don't have that bar that you can get the tool to hook onto, so you will need a different one in order to do that. So they are not just universal methods for both systems. And once you have that hook on there, you can pull that string that was shown earlier, and then that string is going to pull that hook downwards and then push the bar open for you from the inside. So another demonstration here. Get a little way of the giant Karen on the screen.
Can you tell I like demo videos?
Yes. So we inserted the tool at the bottom there just to get us better leverage, and you can see the hook is then being attached to the bar itself. You don't have to get it right onto that metal tubing. You can just get it at the corner handle there. And then you're going to pull the string as hard as you can, and the tool itself will bend, allowing you to open that door from the inside. It is very fun and way easier to make than you would expect. Again, a standard wire coat hanger should be able to do the trick, or if you have just slightly less of a yard of just standard malleable wire. This is a bonus bypass tool that you can use for these. These are like a structured tool that are dedicated to doing just this. The wire provides a little bit more of an additional form of strength, and you can see here when it goes forward that it operates in a very similar fashion where you would insert the tool in between the two doors here, and then using that hooked end, you could pull it forward and release the door from the inside. So the best remediation for wired bypasses is, again, proper installation, having the door sized properly for the frame with no gap underneath or on the sides to allow the tools to be inserted in the first place. Some retrofits that you can make is a fitted bevel door threshold. You see these, again, very common in public spaces that prevent gaps from being formed from the bottom of the door so that wired tools cannot be inserted. And they're usually used in conjunction with these rubber seals or brush seals that do make the movement of the tool itself harder to use. Obviously, with brushes, you could still insert the wire there, but the movement is going to be greatly restricted and more sporadic. So some of the more delicate wiring methods might not be as effective with the wire brush, but with the rubberized, it definitely does make a drastic difference. And an additional retrofit that you can make is having the proper type of levers on your doors. There are different ones that all have different levels of ease when it comes to bypassing. The greater the curve on the end, the easier it's going to be for a bypasser to use that door to bypass into. And when you have an angled edge, it provides a better opportunity for the tool to not fall off at the end. Whereas opposed to, I don't know if you can see the Q lever down there at the bottom, it's just going to be a straight edge right there. That's the one that we used in the demonstration. While they are a little bit more difficult to attach a tool to, they're still, again, not foolproof, but ensuring that you don't have the most obvious ones for a tool to be bypassed with is going to be important, especially if your tools don't have any of the, if your doors don't have any of the additional retrofits that we talked about earlier to make them more safe. Some additional retrofits that you can make there is going to be the elimination of any windows that you have based in your doors themselves, especially those that are near to where the lock is. Having something like this where a bypasser could see exactly where their tool is supposed to go and what type of lock they are dealing with is going to be the easiest way for them to get into whatever building that they are trying to get into. When we do demonstrations at the village, we do them on very small models because the best way for you to learn what you're doing is to see what you're doing. And if you allow a bypasser to see what they're doing, they're going to get in as if they were an amateur because it doesn't take all that much skill to learn these tricks. So having windows like these where you can see exactly where your tool is going, especially for those under the door tools, it takes a great deal of time to align the tool properly to the handle. And if they're able to do it in 10 seconds as opposed to 10 minutes, it takes away the window of time that someone could have caught them as they're trying to bypass into your building. So deadbolts, this is a transition into another very, very common type of lock that we see everywhere, especially very much in residential areas. We all know them. Insert they're key actuated locks where when you turn the key, the bolt inside the lock there is actuated and then you are able to enter or exit the building that you're using. The tool that you would use to bypass this lock is called a J tool. This J tool can be used to actuate the deadbolt from the outside of the door by turning this bottom of the tool right here. It's also sometimes referred to as a thumb turn bypass tool. Deadbolt locks are also sometimes referred to as thumb turn locks. So the requirements for this tool in order to work is enough space between the frame to fit the J tool. They are a thicker tool that do require a wired component inside of the metal casing. So they are about a couple millimeters thick, but thick enough that often there are not a whole lot of doors that do just have a very opportunistic gap such as this to be able to fit the tool inside. Failing natural space would also, enough give would be able to fit the tool into the door. Then we have another video demonstration right here. We love those around here. This is the turning of the tool down at the back right there. Will turn that little clawed end right there, attaching it to the lock themselves, and then you turn that black tool at the bottom again, and you can see the deadbolt turning and being able to be pulled forward. So it's very simple, but again, it requires the space requirements to have that tool be inserted. So again, the best remediation for this is going to be eliminating the deadbolt lock itself, the thumb turn mechanism on the inside. You can use double-sided deadbolts that would completely remove the opportunity for a J tool to be inserted and turn anything because there's not going to be anything in there for them to turn and to deactuate. J tools cannot be used to bypass these systems, obviously, and it's a whole lot more secure than just having the tool be able to be used because of a gap. So again, that's where proper installation comes back in. And then having the thumb turn mechanism be gone itself is also going to be important. And I'll hand it off to Karen to cover push bars, the other half of this. Crashbar talk.
Yeah, so one quick note of the previous slide is, so obviously as Matt said, this is way more secure, but what you are trading it in for is convenience. If you want to get out of a space, you need to unlock the door in order to get back out. And so if it's too inconvenient, sometimes your staff will just leave it unlocked, and somehow that's worse. So, that's definitely something to keep in mind when figuring out. Yeah, fire marshal might also care. So it does depend on, how, what you're allowed to do and what you're able to do and what's realistic in terms of your security. So next I'll be talking about push bars. So earlier Matt talked about the crash bars. I will now be talking about these push bars that go a little more flat against the door. So this we showed you earlier. It is a double door tool and it's made out of a very stiff metal. Sometimes some people also call it a J tool. So it's a little confusing, the terminology, it's not consistent, but I will be calling it a double door tool. So similar to using it on a crash bar, you need enough space to fit the tool in the door, but often you'll see these kinds of double doors with this mechanism, and there is plenty of space in the middle. And obviously, it's easier to do without that little middle bar in the center, but it is still possible. We have another demo video. This one is from fire response. So you can see there's a good amount of give in that door, and it's an external door, and you can fit that tool in, and you can push that bar in and allow you access into that space. So see it again from the secure side. Boom, there we go, nice and easy. Nope. Method number 2 is string. So sometimes you'll see something like this, usually on outdoor gates, where you can't fit your hand through, but you could probably fit some kind of tool through there. So with something like this, you can feed some string through the top of the door, and then usually I like using a little metal stick or something or other to kind of grab the string back out from the other side, and then once you have that looped around that push bar, you can just pull both sides of the string. That'll pull the mechanism towards the door and then unlock it from the outside. Next, I'm talking about pulling really hard. So this sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? But it actually is a very long-standing tradition of physical hackers. There's a lot of doors that when you walk around and you kind of pull on it, it has enough loose springiness that you can actually just yank the whole thing open. Thankfully, this is very easy to pack for, and if I am strong enough to do it, you guys all can do it easily. So usually you want to be looking for multi-bank doors or buildings and facilities that have a lot of doors, because your chances of finding one that's vulnerable to this goes up with every door that you can find. So again, usually with multi-banks, sometimes I'll see 5-door multi-banks, and there'll be one door that I can just give a good yank. In case this was a little too confusing for you guys, I have a little flow chart. I feel like this clarifies things greatly. You just pull it really hard until it opens. Let me know if you have more questions about that at the end. Next, we have hinge removal. So this is another method that people, talk about in the movies, don't really think about as much, but we're gonna talk about it. So we have method number 1, which is removing the hinges. So on the left here, you can see a proper installation of a hinge. And it is such that when the door is closed, you can't really get at the screws. But sometimes you will see something like this, where it is, it works as a hinge, but there's no security there at all if all of those screws are exposed. So obviously you can take a little screwdriver and take a couple of minutes and let yourself into that space. Method number 2 is what's called hinge pin removal. So the two halves of the hinge are held together by essentially a long pin that goes and connects the two. And sometimes you'll see that the door hinge is exposed and you can get at the pin and remove it. So for this method, you use, again, a screwdriver or a nail, a hammer, and then I personally like using vice grips as well. Instructions again, but I will use the demo video instead because I like it more. So, oh my gosh, it's me again. And so you can see the screwdriver down there being used to push that pin out from the top. I think I'm using a screw there. And then I can use my vice grips to pull that out with a little effort. And then I can use my hammer again to get the hinge pin out of the top hinge. I definitely have a good tripod. And then once I've yanked out that hinge pin with my vice grips, I can gently kind of shuffle the door until the hinges separate. And then, here we go. Oh, there you go. And you can see that that allows me access into that space. So how do we remediate this? Well, they do make hinges that don't have removable hinge pins. So you can see down there, I've circled a little set screw, and basically what this does is when the door is closed, you can't access it, and if the set screw is put in there, you can't pull the hinge pin out. If you ever want to remove that hinge pin, you have to open the door first, and so obviously that makes it a lot more difficult. Another method is what are called stud hinges. And so you can see down here a really nice example of a stud hinge where there's little jut outs on that hinge that fit into these holes and then allow them to kind of fit very nicely in each other, and then you can't move the door out of the way even if you pull the hinge pin out. They also have little like retrofits. You can see over here that can do a similar thing that mimic these stud hinges. Next is padlock shims.
All right, so now we're going to dive into standard padlock bypassing. These are all locks that you see are very commonly around. They're going to be that standard brand. I won't name drop any, but we all know. And then the tool that you're going to use is these padlock shims. These can be bought online for very, very little, or you can DIY them out of any thin piece of material. A lot of times people will cut them out of soda cans or beer cans. All you need is just a thin enough piece of metal that you would be able to insert it into the lock itself. So we're just going to walk through some of the anatomy of the lock right here. So this is inside of a standard padlock. You have these little pins on the inside that are going to hold the lock in place, and those are going to be the parts of the lock that you are deactivating with the shims that we showed you earlier. When you when they are deactivated, the pins are in towards the center, and then the lock handles are going to be able to be raised up, and the lock will be unlocked, and then you can lower them back down to actuate those pins again, and they will be locked. And what are you essentially doing with the shims is you are inserting them into the locks, rotating them in such a way that you are deactivating the pins, and then you can lift them up as if they were being unlocked themselves. They're a very easy practice. Again, the tools are very simple. You can make them yourselves, and they don't take all that long to get more refined skills at, and it's one of the bypasses that once you have it, you realize how many places are vulnerable, as they just assume that a cheap lock that they can walk into any standard hardware store and buy is going to be, the be-all and end-all thing that saves their business or their residents. So some remediations. As manufacturers have become aware of shims being used, new mechanisms are in place to make their locks more standard, because if you are a lock-making company and your locks can be bypassed with a can of Coke, you're not a very good lock-making company. So a lot of companies have been adding ball bearing designs into the locking mechanism. So these ball bearings are kept in place even when the padlock is locked, that make using the shims all the more difficult. And again, it creates a higher level of integrity within the lock itself, and does kind of prevent your Coke can cutouts from being the thing that gets you into a standard building.
All right, next I'm going to be talking about button push combination locks. So I'm sure you guys have seen this before. They're used everywhere, and they allow people to have access without needing to carry a physical key. So the one on the left you just put in the button press combination, and then allows you access to the space. On the right, we have like a key box where someone can put in the combination and then get the physical key that allows them into that space. You kind of see them all over. These ones are ones that have the keys inside. This is outside a business region. This has a lot of little storefronts along the place, and the store owners do not want to give a copy of the key to every single member of opening staff, because that would be kind of asinine. So instead, they put a singular copy of the key into one of these boxes, they give their staff the combination, and then they can go and unlock the door when they get there in the morning. You also see this a lot. This is outside of a condo, and so all of these are used for Airbnbs. And really, these will usually have key fob credentials inside, and they allow the owner of the Airbnb to let people check in without needing to meet up with them in person. The thing about these boxes that have the fobs in them is they're often not shielded because people aren't thinking about that use case. So you can use either a Proxmark, a Flipper Zero, anything of that sort to duplicate that key fob credential inside, usually without even needing to unlock the box at all. I don't need to figure out the combination. I don't need to waste my time. I can put my duplication tool right up against that plastic and it'll let me duplicate the fob very easily. These kinds of locks, the simplex, they have a default code from the factory. It's 2 and 4 pressed at the same time, and then 3. And there are so many places that use these simplex locks and never change the combination. Probably I'd say like a good 30%. I've had like friends that work in labs that use the default code. I've had friends that live in like houses that use this default code. And it's such an easy fix. You can change your combination. They are literally designed so that you can set whatever combination you'd like. But again, because people aren't thinking about security and they're not keeping in mind how easy it is to, just look up the default code from the factory, people don't think to change that combination and can be a big security vulnerability. The other thing is over here, you can see a nice sign that you can view from the outside on how to unlock this door. So, obviously a very bad idea that I have to strongly recommend against. And in general, as a rule of thumb, if you suspect that someone unauthorized knows the combination to your button push combination box, change your combination. These are designed so that they are not particularly difficult to change the combination to, and you can send out a message to all of the people that use that space, hey, I've changed the combination, it's this now, and it is such an easy fix that people don't bother thinking about or, thinking in a security-minded way about. Matt, you are on Enterphones.
Yes. So I'm going to take you into the world of Enterphones. These are the common boxes that you see that give you access to apartment buildings. You can either enter in a code that you have as a resident and then you'll be let in, or you can contact a resident through these devices and they will buzz you up. You see them all throughout just everywhere that has a large-scale office building, residence complex, the whole deal. These allow visitors to contact someone on the inside, and it's going to be those methods that we use, that buzzing in method, to exploit the vulnerabilities of these systems. So there are a few major brands that do all of the Enterphone systems that you see. They're very common, and there's not all that much competition out there. Again, not naming names right now, but a lot of these companies use default master codes that are available online in order to bypass, add in residents, add in new numbers, update the systems. These are something that landlords or building owners would have, but again, they don't think to change them. So all these master codes for the most major Enterphone brands are available online for your use as well. Again, people will often not bother to set new combinations. So if you are in ownership of one of these systems and you have not done that yet, go back home and do so. So again, change your combination is going to be the first step in fixing these systems. One of the other biggest vulnerabilities in these systems here, I guess we are naming names. But a lot of these systems here use master keys and they're all keyed alike within their Enterphone systems. So if you have a specific branded key, you have a key to that specific brand Enterphone catalog. Now, as models do get upgraded over time, they are moving away from these systems. However, in a lot of, especially American metropolitan areas, these systems were installed when the building was made several decades ago, and no one has thought to change anything about them. So why would they go and update their security system when their building is conceptually fine, not knowing that anyone online could go anywhere that a standard, hardware store or drop shipping company and buy these keys for, pennies and then come back and have access to their multi-million-dollar building. So this is what the circuitry looks like inside of the Enterphone here, and it's going to be this system that once you have the key for the Enterphone that you are going to be greeted with and going to need to know how to understand in order to bypass it in an effective way. That's not a clip at all. So the instructions for it is going to be unlocking the Enterphone panel with any of the keys. It is, again, important to know what key you need for what system that you're operating with, and if your system is more modern than the keys are online that are available for you. So once you've identified what key that you need, you unlock the panel here, and then again, you're going to be greeted by the circuitry, and then you need to find the unlocking mechanism. A lot of these Enterphone systems are going to be made with a map of the board on the inside of it, just for safety and maintenance concerns, which again gives you so much access to everything you need when they spell it out for you of where you need to look. So you're going to need to find the unlocking mechanism and the communication channel. So you're going to find your access relay port, identify whether or not it's an open system or a closed system, and then jump the mechanism using any piece of conductive material, and then you'll be buzzed in the same way that if you knew someone on the inside or had a code yourself, that you would be buzzed in. So it's as much as you are opening up the Enterphone itself and you're dealing with the circuitry, it's one of the most non-intrusive methods of bypassing, because you're unlocking the Enterphone in a contemporary way. You're using the right tool that the owners would have in the first place. You're not bypassing the lock using some additional tool that could cause any further damage. And then when you're jumping the circuit, all you are doing is, again, closing or opening the circuit that you have. So it's not going to cause any physical damage to the Enterphone itself. And then as you jump that circuit, the door will unlock, and then you will be buzzed in. This is one of the bypasses that we mentioned earlier that literally does take seconds. If you know what system you are using, if you know what key you need to use, you can get into these Enterphone systems quicker than you could with buzzing in your own code, even if you lived there as a resident. So we have a video demonstration right here.
Yeah, we don't get audio.
Okay.
That's so sad.
So again, yeah, you're opening up that panel here with those key-to-like keys. You're greeted with your circuitry in here, and then you're taking any piece of conductive material, we have cables in this situation, and buzzing yourself in. It is that simple, it is that quick. If you have one of these systems, a lot of the times after we give this talk here, people are like, I am concerned about that. This is not gonna make me sleep better knowing that everyone can get into my apartment building. So again, the best remediation for that is going to be change your lock. Get away from those systems that all use these key-to-like keys and get yourself something that's a little bit more secure. Additional remediations that you can do involve fixing the Enterphone system itself to make it unable to be opened as easily if you don't want to change that lock, or if you change that lock and there are other flaws with your system. You can add a bar over top here, which we see a lot very commonly now, that prevent the Enterphone from being lowered down and refusing access to the circuitry, or having cages or other like enforcement methods that prevent people from opening it up, that require some additional level of hardware or skill to remove those cages or bars from the Enterphone before you can access it. So I'll pass it off to Karen to cover wheelchair buttons and request to exit sensors.
All right, so wheelchair buttons. We love them. I love accessibility, and this allows the door to be opened automatically when that button is pushed. Usually, if you're installing it properly, it should not be unlocking the door when it's not supposed to, but on occasion, you'll see it installed in such a way where the button on the unsecure side can be pushed and also unlocks that door. So here is a really fun real-life example. I won't say exactly where this is, but you can see that that door is locked, but I can push that wheelchair button and it opens it very nicely for me from the unsecure side. And so again, this kind of thing happens because people aren't thinking about security and they're not security-minded. Huh? Oh, yes, here's the video one more time. So that door is very locked, and then I push the button on the unsecure side, and it very gently opens that door for me. Also, we have request exit sensors. So this is a request exit sensor, sometimes called a rec sensor, and these are to allow you to exit the building without the alarm going off. So usually if you are walking out of the space, it'll kind of blink a little green light, letting you know that it's seen you, and then it goes, okay, someone's exiting. You can unlock the door, or you can leave the alarm off because someone is leaving from the secure side. Most of these rely on passive infrared, which is, very simplified down, is a heat sensor. If someone can trick that sensor into seeing a temperature differential and thinks that there's someone on that secure side that is leaving, then it can allow them access. So you might have seen this online before, but this is canned air. And this is how you could use it. So here's a lovely little demo video. You can see that door is locked, so kind of pulling at it, but they can stick the little tube of canned air through the gap, flip it upside down so it'll be very cold. There they go, it sets off that sensor and then unlocks the door and allows them access. So what do we do in this case? Well, there used to be this company called Interlogics, not sponsored, that used to make these rec sensors that not only use the passive infrared, but also radar. So it would detect if something was actually moving towards the door instead of just, oh, there's a temperature difference from the rest of the room, so it's probably a person. These kinds of dual technology rec sensors are still available from other manufacturers, but on the scale of like thousands of dollars per unit as opposed to hundreds of dollars per unit. So, oops. But if this is something that concerns you as far as your own security goes, then it's something to look into and might be worth that investment. These rec sensors give you convenience. It means you don't have to tap your credential to get out. It means you don't have to push a button or do anything. You just walk towards the door and it unlocks it for you. But if it is a space where you need it to be more secure, consider a different method. Think about using a push button, preferably one that can't be accessed easily from the unsecure side of the door, or a tap-in, tap-out system, which is obviously the most secure of the three. Again, this means that people will have to dig through their bag if they're trying to exit a room. And if it is too inconvenient, your staff can just prop the door open because they don't want to bother. So you really do have to kind of balance that security versus convenience, especially when you're working with a lot of staff and a lot of personalities. Next, I'm going to pass it to you to talk real quick about elevators, but not that much about elevators.
Yeah, so this is going to be a very surface level introduction to the elevator physical security bypass, because I know a lot of you aren't that interested in elevators, because if you were interested in elevators, you wouldn't be here, because Creator Stage 1 is Physical Security's Elevators 101 bypass talk. So if it was top of mind, sorry, you missed it. So this is going to be a very shallow dive here. They're everywhere within modern buildings, often the floors and buildings in high rises or office areas that have some level of, enhanced access will have restricted areas or floors that are locked off, requiring a key card or a fob to get into. There are many ways to bypass these floors through elevator hacking. Check out the elevator talk for more info. It's being recorded, so you'll be fine. So the best remediation for these is to change your locks, so you can switch out most common service locks that will again give you access to the internal mechanics inside of the panel. But you can't do this for fire recall key switches. There are also additional methods that this doesn't prevent for jumpering and hoistway entry access. But make sure that when you're doing any modifications to your elevator systems that you confer with local regulations in order to make sure that you are not doing anything that would either be against fire code or other additional levels of safety. And the best remediation for this is to not simply rely on lockout systems for elevators for floors, because once those are able to be bypassed and get into very easily through RFID cloning, through panel alteration, once someone has access to that floor, they shouldn't have access to everything on that floor. Make sure that the additional doors that you have or additional points of vulnerability within those floors are secured by other additional physical security methods, and not just assuming that because, the everyday person can't get in here, everything's going to be fine. Just leave all your valuable stuff out in the open. Please don't just rely on elevators for security. And then we're going to go to unlocked or improperly locked doors are going to be the easiest and sometimes most mind-boggling ways of bypassing in to a piece of, to like a building or a residence. You'd be surprised by the numbers of doors that are just left unlocked or completely open. There are plenty of times you can access an area just by pulling on some doors and seeing what is unlocked and what isn't unlocked. You see this a lot in office buildings and hotels, places where often there is so much foot traffic that is a nuisance for people to have doors be locked and have them have some additional method to get in there. So yeah, close doors behind you and make sure that if you have staff that they're not just trying to get around different systems, because human error is going to be the number one cause of unlocked or improperly locked doors. Workers propping it open or forgot to unprop it after they leave a room, go on a break, something like that is a great way of someone being able to walk by your store going, oh, this door is open, I'm going to go in through the employee entrance. If you come to when the building is come into a building when the building is open and then prop it up, if you do some level of social engineering, getting into a system or an area where you are not supposed to be, and then leaving your own trail of unlocked doors, is going to be a good way for you to be able to get back in. If someone just left clutter by the door that held it open, you see this with construction sites, any real busy area, that you need to make sure that your entryways and exits are clear of any debris that would otherwise impede the door from locking itself, or the security guard or the closing staff just forgot to lock it itself. Again, if you have staff, specifically young staff, and you're out there very late, there are a lot of shortcuts that people use. I say, having very young staff myself, that they just don't put in the level of care that you need to secure the building. And you got to make sure that the people that you have are working with your best interests in mind as well. Other factors that affect this outside of human error are going to be environmental. Air pressure differences can cause doors to not shut properly. Warped door frames, especially in areas of high humidity, if your door frame is just traditional wood. We have these when we build our doors for our village all the time, where we go and get the wood out of our storage unit and we go, this door is completely not usable anymore because it will lock because the wood has been warped over a year of sitting in a Las Vegas storage unit. So poorly installed doors or locks, we talked about this at the top of this conversation, where if your door latch strike plate is not positioned properly, that you will be able to have doors not lock properly, for better or worse, depending on what side of the situation you are on, or if the lock is broken, poorly maintained, or if there's just simply no lock there. That's crazy. I know that you didn't pay all the money to come to DEF CON and come to Las Vegas for someone to stand here and tell you that the best physical security method is to have a lock on the door. But here we are. It happens. And as you can see here, please keep this door closed. And as you may not see here because of the table, a giant stool not keeping that door closed. So again, this isn't what you came here to hear, but don't do that. Don't have your staff do that. And if you see that happening, don't take it lightly, because if it's happening then when you see it, it's happening a lot of times when you don't.
Yeah, and one other thing to note with this is, from the red teamer's perspective, you can go around and you can look for these signs that say keep this door closed, because if it's bad enough that they needed to put a sign to remind them, it means that chances are if you come by enough times, it'll just not be closed because they need to keep reminding their staff.
Listen, again, so making...
Oh my God.
So yeah, again, for just making sure that your locks are proper, your handles are situated properly.
Oh yeah, no, this slide, there's just no lock in the door. Yeah, so these both were taken like on site. So obviously they had some kind of construction or replacement going on. And the thing is, when the lock is removed, if you try to push down that handle, it won't open. So someone tries that on, they're like, oh, okay, cool, no one can get in. The thing is, you can stick a screwdriver into that hole and just pull the mechanism and it'll unlock the door as if you turned the key. So as Matt said earlier, have a lock on your door, please, I beg.
Thank you, Karen. So right back to you for seeing going around.
Cool, let's try to wrap this up so you guys have a little bit of time for questions. So this is, very common you see in spaces. This is a very lovely example. My coworker here is jumping over a fence, and there's barbed wire at the top, but it is actually the door. Hold on. Here, let me pause it. But the gate here is actually installed backwards. So normally, if you've put this the right way, that barbed wire should be over your head and prevent you from being able to climb it as easily. But because of the way that they installed it, you can just go up and over without needing to worry about it at all. We also have this. So this was a really fun example we found one time. So this is a ladder that gives you rooftop access, and there's this lovely cage that goes around it, and that's locked with a padlock. And so you go, oh no, I can't get up that ladder. But the backside of the ladder actually has so much space that you can use it as a perfectly functioning ladder to get up to that roof access. So even though that cage is there and it's locked and you can't get in there, you can still use the ladder as a ladder. Here's another example. Obviously, the tree has grown around this fence that's been here for a very long time and has just provided like the easiest climbing method possible to get into this gated off secured space. Here's another example. So you can see that light in there is outside actually. So this is an exterior vent access area. It leads straight outside, and there's this huge hole that takes you directly into the building. You can see here that the wall just doesn't extend up past where it should. It does extend up, but someone's cut a hole for some kind of maintenance or some kind of use case when the building was, when they were working on things up there. But now that's just an unsecured space. It's a huge hole that I can crawl through from the outside to get to wherever it is this photo is being taken from. Here's another example of false ceilings. So this is my coworker going up into the ceiling. That wall that you see right there is actually walling off a secured space. You need a key fob to get into that little office area, actually. But as you can see, there is no wall that extends up past that false ceiling. So he's in here, he's gently taking that little tile off of the top, and there he is. And this video now is being taken from the secure side, and he is easily able to just gently climb up and then drop down. And then this allows him access, and then he can go to the door and just open it from the secure side to let everyone else in. Obviously, if you are going to be going up above false ceilings and whatnot, I have to warn you to be very careful. Here is a news report from a robbery that occurred where a man climbed onto the roof of the pharmacy to try to get access into the pharmaceutical space, and the camera catches him falling through the ceiling. Probably he was up in the false ceiling and stepped on a little bit of a weak spot and just crash right through. So, you want to be aware of this. Often in red teaming engagements, I'm not actually going to the false ceiling. I am checking to see if the wall extends and then just noting that down and mentioning that as a possible attack vector instead of possibly, putting myself at risk up there. And then generally other important remediations, you've heard a lot about social engineering. Even if you have the most secure locks in the world, if your coworkers are letting people into your space, that's a huge problem. Keys and credentials are often left out where people can see them or access them. I've had times where I've seen physical keys left on desks, and I can look in close enough or take like a camera and zoom in and get a good enough photo that I can duplicate it off site. And generally, you want to be promoting that security culture within your workplace. Obviously, alarms and sensors are important. It doesn't matter how long it takes someone to get into a space or how much force it takes. If they're able to take the entire night to do so without detection, then you have a big problem. So these cameras and these sensors are also part of like a big overall security plan. Huh? Oh yes, of course. Yeah, and so finally, response times matter. If you have off-site security, that takes 20 minutes to get on-site and respond, and it takes 15 minutes for someone to get in and out and do what they need to do, then there's no point in having security at all. So, we want to be keeping in mind all of these to put together overall good security plan in your space outside of just the physical mechanisms.
Yes, so we are running a little bit tight, so if we don't have enough time to get to everyone's questions here, feel free to come find us in the village. We will answer anything that you do have. We want to take the time to thank you today for taking the time out of your morning to come and talk with us on the last day here and listen to what we have to say. And again, if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to find us online through our social media or at the village. But yeah, if there are any questions, feel free. Yeah. Sorry, the double-sided dead latch? Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing is with the double-sided deadbolt is it is quite secure, so you have to kind of think about other ways. Often you're kind of left in that case to either lockpicking it or finding an alternate way in. So usually, especially in larger facilities, they might have a whole bunch of doors, a few of which is secured with this double-sided deadbolt, but you kind of have to go around. You might be able to find alternate ways to get into the space. I know they're used a lot in like European countries, so it's kind of just keeping in mind that you have to think a little outside of the box. What's up?
Is the double door tool work on paddles?
Could you explain what you mean by paddles?
Exit paddles where you have something about this big, you press the lever, that sort of the lever action for exit.
Oh yeah, those paddles. Yeah. So the thing is with these bypasses is we're kind of just giving you a framework from which you can work off of. There's lots of different encounters with a lot of different kinds of doors that you'll see where you can take an existing tool and slightly modify it. So definitely the paddles, you can use the really stiff like kind of J-shaped one where you push the thing in. I think that would definitely work for paddles. You might just have to extend it or redesign it a little bit to make it work for your use case. Those doors are also generally vulnerable to latch targeted bypasses. A lot of the time they don't install a dead latch properly or particularly well on those. And so you can often find some way or another, whether that's with modified tools or just a modified mindset to get in there. What's up?
Have you heard of someone entering an electronically solenoid actuated door? They have a handheld magnetic degausser with a variable frequency on it?
So I have like heard about it. I've never seen someone do it myself in person, but yeah, like, you know, the thing is, again, with this physical security is it's all about people finding a remediation. They're like, oh, this is super secure. It uses a solenoid, it has all these things. And then someone else goes, oh, so it works on this. So what if I just take that away, right? So I think that's very fun and a very clever way to bypass that kind of locking mechanism. And the other thing is like with solenoids, and once you kind of get into like things that rely on certain level, like, you know, things like electricity and things that need to be there, there's also like other bypasses and other things that you can attack as far as like in the junction box that like kind of powers and supplies it. So yeah, I think that's really fun. And I think I hope that someone's able to find another remediation or some way to modify it to make it harder to bypass it that way. Is that? Yeah. Okay, awesome. What's up?
Is there consideration with these tools on how to conceal them, or is it generally like one person opens the door and lets someone else in? Because if I have this giant wire.
Yeah, so it depends on the tool. Like a latch slip bypass tool, you know, you can get them, they're about like this big. They make bigger ones, they make like keychain sized ones. So those ones are easy. Something like a wire, usually I like kind of coiling up and then I conceal it in like a flat pack. So usually maybe like you coil it up, you put it in like a flat, stiff envelope, and then that goes in like a briefcase. I personally like briefcases or laptop bags, especially when I'm doing red teaming in office spaces because it blends right in. And I don't have to put a laptop in there. I can put whatever supplies I need just kind of in the general shape of a laptop. So yeah, I'd say that. So,
When you hit the push bar and you talk about having a hook tool with a string that you can pull down, I didn't understand how you got the string around the push bar, because in my mind, when you push the hook over, the string's on the backside, so when you pull it, it wants to just pull it off the hook.
so are you talking about like the lever handles or the?
Pull with push bar?
Oh, the
Oh
full.
yeah, but for crash bars, like the
Oh, the
so
crash bar.
yeah, the hook is shaped in such a way that as you're pulling the string is going to be
Here, let
long
me-
enough that you're pulling it downwards as you have. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
How do you get the string needs to go around it?
So it's not the string that goes around it. It's actually the hook.
Yeah,
The metal hook. Here, hold on. Let me.
The string is on the backside of the hook.
Hold on.
The string isn't pulling down.
Yeah. If you want a little bit, we do need to exit this space
Yeah,
very quickly.
the goons
If
are
you
gonna
do want a
kill me.
greater example of it, head to our village. We do have an example that we can
actually,
show you.
if you want to come outside and we can just
we
show
can show you in
real
greater
quickly.
detail. Yeah, whatever.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.